well. That way it's easily shareable. Well, sorry, it's a meeting, so no, I won't do that. If it was a webinar, I would have. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start by introducing the chair and vice chairs and our helpful model coordinator. So let's start with me real quick because I'm the least important person here. Again, my name is Ryan Wilcoxon. I'm the president of UCA, and I'm really acting as secretary to help keep the conversations going, appointments set, and doing a bit of the outreach, and then I'll do a lot of the promoting if we move this to an IOP. Now I'd like to bring your attention to Jeff Schmidt, our chair for this initiative. Jeff, if you would please introduce yourself again.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. Thanks for the handoff there. Hi, now my name is Jeff Schmidt. I've been at PGM for the last 25 years, involved primarily in markets and power systems modeling. So I have a very vested interest in making sure that this moves forward. In my 25 years, I've both made the markets model and the operations model down to the details. I'm probably one of the few people actually at my company that actually enjoys using CIM and understands it. So I have a real vested interest in wanting to make this something that we do as an organization throughout the United States to make this happen. And, you know, from that perspective, it's always about the data. I've recently transitioned to a new role, which is the Director of Corporate Data Services at my company. Basically the equivalent of the CDO, if you were to think of it that way. And now that I've got more influence over all the data within the company, it's put me in an even better position to work throughout operations, markets, and planning to make sure it happens, one, at my company, and then push it further outside to our TOs and to the member RTOs and ISOs. So I'm glad everyone's here to join us, and I'll hand it off to Pat.
Very good. I'm Pat Brown, and I was delighted to hear Jeff's introduction. I did not know all that about him, and I think it bodes very well to end up with somebody that has in-depth grid model data management and entry and all that, and standards use, moving up into a position where at a company where that kind of background can be, you know, really leveraged to improve things. So I love it. That's great. Gosh, I'm an old person by now. I worked a full career's worth in the control center, supporting the control center applications at a mid-sized Midwest utility, retired from there, moved to the Electric Power Research Institute, stayed there about 11 years, working exclusively on the CIM and enterprise data management using the CIM, mostly grid model data, but a bit of asset integration, asset data related integration as well. During the course of those years, I moved from the US to EPRI's Dublin office. So I have a bit of familiarity with predominantly distribution data exchanges between distribution organizations here in Europe. Retired from EPRI several years ago, and now run my just own little consulting company here in Dublin. Yeah, and I guess most of something I would like to observe is that I suppose I could also mention that I have run a couple of IOPs, but the interesting fact to me is that most of my energy over the latter part of my career was spent looking at data exchanges inside utilities. But somehow now I have managed to get involved in way more data exchanges between utilities, which is clearly, I'm thinking, really the focus of the use cases that drive the interest in this North American IOP. John.
Hi, John Mosley, a principal engineer, model architecture and integration at ERCOT. Been here 22 years, working with CIM for about 20 of those. We basically are, you know, for lack of a better word, CIM shop for all of our integration with our EMS, MMS systems. So, you know, really hoping to push this forward because I feel like it's a good standard and a good way to exchange data between not only internally within your system, but also with external market participants. So, you know, that's really kind of the spiel. I think Jeff said it all as well. So just turn it over to Alex, I guess.
Thanks, John.
Alex, are you here?
I am.
Oh, yes,
just
yes.
struggling with the mute button. I'm Alex Anderson. I'm supporting in the model coordinator role as the technical point of contact. I'm a senior power systems engineer at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, one of the 17 labs under the Department of Energy. I originally, like Pat, started off in the control room operations space at a consulting company in Seattle, where we did the NERC continuing education hours for the TOP, BA, RC operators, doing the black start restoration drills, hurricane drills for MISO, CERC, ISO New England, and so on. Stayed in that role for 5 years in the transmission space, then came over to PNNL and have been working in distribution and heavily in the open source tooling side of the CIM world, of the tools available for the community to build profiles, exchange network data, validate network data, convert it between different formats. And my job for the North American Interop will be helping with tracking the technical tickets that we raise, new modeling classes, new attributes, new features through our Redmine system, and coordinating with the model managers of the core CIM UCA IUG technical working groups for getting those revisions to the CIM standard incorporated into subsequent golden copy releases.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everybody else. And I just want to add one last thing. We are looking to do possibly an IOP in fall 2027. We have a tentative location, but for other details, like maybe getting some commitments from vendors and utilities as witnesses, we will be sending out some sort of maybe survey or something, a link to where you guys can kind of give your input, because we don't want to just make this one-sided. We want to do what works for everybody. And with that, I'm going to flip on over to the slide deck here, and we'll get started.
All right, thanks, Ryan. I'll go ahead and take the first few slides, and others will present some of the material as well. So thanks again for everyone coming to the meeting and discussing this very important item. So one of the things I didn't put out in my introduction, but one of the things I've enjoyed most throughout my career is the mission itself. Really keeping the power on for 67 million people at PJM has always been something that's given me a great reason to go to work. And through that, I mean, we literally have, when I first got to PJM, and this will set the stage for you, we had barely just moved off of the mainframe EMS. You know, so that takes you back how far we were actually gone. And then we've moved on to obviously other versions of it since then. And we're even installing the most recent NA right now. But all of that requires good data to be in the system. And, you know, and those of us who have been in the industry for a very long time also knows that the grid is changing at a pace that have never seen before in the past. We right now have, you know, just probably 5 years ago, maybe 6, the load curve was basically flattening or maybe even dropping off. And now we're looking at an exponential growth of the load curve due to the data center growth, the large loads, all of the fun things that have been happening within the industry. So everything that goes along with getting all of that data from, you know, renewables, increasing renewables, it's everywhere. We just had last week, as you know, PJM had an extremely hot week over the 4th of July. We set a record. We almost hit 169,000 of load just for the PJM territory, which is breaking an old school record way back. And, you know, we even had to use all the demand response to get there. So you got renewables coming in. We had almost 14,000 megawatts of solar. Now, I know that's not big for other areas. It's very big for PJM when you have to deal with when it goes away and when it comes in. But that renewable energy, we have to keep track of that. So that's a different CIM profile The changing load patterns, distributed energy resources, all the new storage things that are coming along, everything's evolving, and even the new market dynamics as we work through that. So this is why we wanted to come together, and the grid model exchange is increasing. PJM specifically in the middle of a lot of RTOs and ISOs, and we have to communicate with all of them, pass our information back and forth. We've gotten to some pretty good processes. MISO and PJM really work very well together to exchange the data, but we still have to do some translation in order to make that happen because we're used to their SIM and our SIMs don't come out at the same time, but we do a very good job of communicating. The data landscape remains fragmented. Teams still rely on this manual process. I think every different RTO and ISO that we interface with, we have a different process to make that work effectively with them. Now we gather the same information, but the way they have it in their system and ours is not always consistent. So we have to do some translation and mapping. So that leads us into the survey that Ryan has linked here as well. It talks about what we heard in the survey. The manual process still exists. It's a recurring pain point. We want to make that better. The model interpretation across tools, you can always get some gains there by doing that in a specific way. And definitions of profile guidance are not clear enough. I mean, there's SIM standards. People are on different versions of SIM. There's a lot of consistency, but when you jump from SIM 12 to SIM 17, there's enough differences, including the transformer models, that really makes a big difference in how you deal with it. So the link to the survey is there if you want to take a look at it as well. And if we go to the next slide. So what do we want to do and why are we here? So basically, we want to define and demonstrate a simple shared North American CIM profile. And this has already been done elsewhere. Europe is way ahead of us on this. And in process for both transmission planning, operations, and markets as well. You can convert this over the commercial model quite well as well. We do that now at PJM. And we want to use this across utilities, ISOs, RTOs, and vendors. If we create one standard for the SIM, that makes it easier for everybody to exchange and communicate within that environment. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make things easier in order to communicate and facilitate that. So if you go to slide 4, please, Ryan. So here's just 4 bullets we want to take away on that. One back there, Ryan. He went to 5. It's simple. It's shared. It's demonstrated and actionable. Now, we didn't come up with a nice acronym for that, and it didn't really work. And I tried to come up with one while I was thinking about it this morning. But basically, the concept is keep it simple. I won't add the other S because most people know about that one. But it is, keep it as simple as possible. Shared so everybody knows what the consistency is and what we should be using as a standard. Demonstrated, we've already seen that can work. And then actionable. How do we move forward? Make sure people can test it and communicate and exchange SIMs amongst other RTOs and ISOs, including the TOs. We've started doing this with one of our TOs, and it's really become a really good process. The challenge we have right now is that we're on different SIM versions, and some of the fields will not work consistently, but we're moving forward with a way that we can all get that consistent, including a identifier. It would be great because you don't have to map it out and figure out what one system calls an item and another system calls it as well. So slide 5, please, Ryan. So what's in it for the stakeholders? I mentioned this a little bit, but it's not just for the RTOs and ISOs. They're clearly a big part of that because we have to exchange outside of it. It's cleaner, the exchanging expectations. It's a more consistent model and interpretation, and it aligns the RTOs and ISOs together. But we also want to do it because right now PJM interfaces with 27 different TOs. Each TO has their own model, and we have to bring that model into our model in order to create one big model. So there's less manual reconciliation. We can exchange better with not only our TOs and neighbors, and more confidence in incoming the model data. It gives you a way to do it with less time. I think when people realize how often PJM only builds the model quarterly, but in that quarterly model build process, we have 18 to 24 months of forward-looking model data. And you can consistently keep that in there, and it takes a long time to reconcile all of that in order to properly test it before you actually put it in and use it to actually keep the lights on for the power grid. And this is obviously a chance to create the scope. And then for vendors, if the vendors know the tools we want to use, it creates a real good implementation target. There's less custom interpretation. Everybody knows the same standard. It makes it just easier to work with, and a chance to demonstrate that an existing capability that exists elsewhere could be brought into North America as well. And then obviously we want others to come in with a direct way to profile and test it and execute it and make sure it works. And I'll stop there. I saw some questions come in. I was going to wait till we got to the end, but we can certainly look at them here. I'll take a look at the questions. Yeah, that's a good answer, Alex. I was going to go the similar way with that. It really does miss some of those points, but you know, I think the question's been answered in the chat. But I will open it up if anyone has any additional questions here, but I'll hand it off to Pat for the next slides, and we can wait till the end or just bring them in now.
Very good. I'll move ahead then.
Well,
Oh,
Jeff, I
is there
had
a
one,
question?
wait, Pat, I had one question. Hey, Jeff,
Yes, absolutely.
everything he said is real good, but I'd like to know right now. I know we got some utilities on here, and I know we got some consultants on here, and I know there's one vendor. Is it only one vendor that we have participating on the call right now?
I would have to look through the roster. I didn't see who was
Because
just us.
we do need to get synergy between multiple vendors to participate with us somehow. And I just wanted to lay that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
David,
I do see two vendors, David.
Okay, who's the second one?
Who is the
Todd's
first
on-
one, David?
Todd's
If
on
you-
and Alan's on.
Because I see I see Emerson there. Who's
I
the
see
other
two.
one?
Now that I'm looking, I see Siemens and OSI.
Okay,
Cisco.
which one?
Northwood, actually, Northwood is there too. We are three. If that
Okay.
is
There are
okay.
three. Okay,
Excellent.
which one? Who's the Siemens person? Then I missed him. Oh, Becky.
Sam.
I see Becky.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm a little bit late today. I
I
apologize.
see Becky.
Cisco's here. Sorry.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Good. No, great point,
I'm all
David.
about making you feel better, so I'm glad I can do that for you.
Great.
Oh, we also have Michael. We have Michael from Extensible. So we have 4, 5.
Yeah, but I don't call Michael. I call Michael more of a consultant than a vendor in this context. So, is that how you would relate yourself, Michael? More of a consultant when it comes to this, since you don't deliver EMS systems.
Yeah, we don't deliver EMS systems. Yeah, so no, I probably fall more under the consultant. I agree. Yeah.
So that's the reason I'm looking at it, because I was hoping we would get the big five or big four, however you want to divide them anymore, to participate.
Right. Yes.
I can also
Vendors are-
take an action item, David, to get this invite over to the GE Small World folks because they were interested in participating.
Thank you, Alex.
Right. And yes, vendors are a critical component, as are multiple other players. So I just wanted to dig in a little bit more detail into what we are thinking. We are imagining that the best place to focus is on the EQ profile. So yes, data exchanges may need a great deal more than that, but EQ is foundational. It is the set of data that describes grid equipment, its connectivity, and its electrical parameters. So starting with that profile, but thinking perhaps that there are at least a couple of versions that might be good to look at. One is the version that is currently the standard version of the EQ profile. It's described in edition 2.1 of the 61970-452 standard, which actually is exactly the same as what CGMES version 3.0 describes if you're talking strictly about grid data. So that is kind of the the standard profile has been implemented by multiple vendors and is probably a nice one to use to just demonstrate the way the world is able to work already right now. But good to see it in action for folks. Another thing that another version of that EQ profile that we are looking at is the version that should be coming out based on CIM 18, which is the next version of the underlying CIM canonical model. It is possible that a fall 2027 timeframe might be really good timing related to that, because it would be catching that definition, that profile definition, before it got very far into the standardization process, while it still could be commented on and updated if we found things in the IOP that looked to us like they needed correcting. So that's another alternative. And the third thing that I think it's important to note that we would be looking at is a profile, an EQ profile with those kind of, NERC specific extensions or that kind of thing that are tailored to exchanges in the US and also tailored to the kinds of use cases that we are hoping you guys will identify for us, where the CIM-based solutions would be most useful. Then, yes, about those use cases. It seems important to us to take a look at the kinds of exchanges that are most commonly used in North America, in the transmission world, to get information on what those might be, whether they're in the operations domain, in the planning domain, kind of prioritize them maybe on the level of interest in each use case, in each area. Look at the ability of the existing and next version EQ profiles to support those use cases, and then suggest extensions probably to the next EQ profile, I would say, to meet those use cases, to better support the kind of data that they need. The next step would be to actually create the new tailored to the extension, tailored to North America extension profile. The other profiles hopefully will be, well, one of them certainly is well defined now. Hopefully that CIM 18 based profile will be defined by then. And then the work would turn to actually creating some good test information that conforms to each of those profiles. So identifying, mangling, creating some kind of a test model or test models in alignment with each of those profiles. Lastly, we would be suggesting doing a real interoperability event in person, because I think one of the places where magic happens in face-to-face interoperability events is when the folks that use vendor tools have a real opportunity to chat with the vendors themselves, to see what they can do, and for vendors to be able to connect with potential customers as well. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that using that existing profile or including that existing profile in the interoperability event is because it will hopefully extend the, what do I want to say? It will enlarge the collection of vendors who might be interested in participating, maybe to vendors that are outside the US even, because like I said, that existing profile is indeed the one that is used here in Europe as the CGMES profile. So yeah, it seems like there's real advantages to having multiple profiles involved in the IOP. If you could move ahead to the next slide, please. Thank you. We are planning to sort of simultaneously move a couple of tracks forward. A technical track is described on the left and an administrative one on the right. In that technical track, we'd be identifying the profiles, kind of refining what I have just been talking about, doing the modifications to the extended profile, and in parallel with that, doing some kind of test model creation. Meanwhile, the administrative track is going to be handling project management, outreach, and marketing. And we are, like I said, kind of aiming to reach as many vendors as we can across North America, Europe, Australia, and to recruit test witnesses kind of as widely as we can among North American RTOs, ISOs, transmission utilities. That workstream B will also be responsible for doing event planning and coordination, all the kind of facilities stuff. Next slide, please. Just one last kind of sales pitch here. We are really hoping to make the IAP valuable to the electric utility industry as a whole, to demonstrate that solutions already exist, to validate proposed profiles, to put forward EQ profile extensions that meet unique North American needs, and to enable connections to be made between the folks that participate in the interoperability event. We think that there's value for vendors to come to show what their tools can do. There's value to RTOs, ISOs, transmission utilities to be able to chat with vendors, speak with their technical resources about tool capabilities, get demonstrations. I'd say there's value to consultants to come see, get a lay of the land, right? See what the tool capabilities are out there, see how utilities are wanting to use them, see what activities utilities and RTOs and ISOs have going on. And also, honestly, to regulators, to see interoperability in action, to understand the benefits of standards-based exchanges. I will just point out that the success of standards-based data exchanges in Europe has been largely driven by regulatory agencies over here. Anyway, that's my last slide here, and I just think the message the overall message is, yeah, we'd really like to have you join with us to work on this interoperability event and move the use of the CIM forward. With that, I think is it over to John?
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, this is going to echo a lot of what Pat said, but basically, let's say this. I feel like a lot of times when CIM is pitched to kind of the higher ups, it sounds like an academic exercise. And it's like, we need to be able to say, it's not an academic exercise, it's a real life way of exchanging data. It's going to make our lives easier. It's going to help with the accuracy of the model. It's going to help with the reliability of our systems. It's going to help across the board if we're all speaking the same language. So as part of that, to make sure that it doesn't, and it isn't an academic exercise, from the industry, we need people to bring their use cases, bring their pain points, bring the, hey, here's where my data exchange hurts me. This is where, we have people who spend hours upon hours trying to align these things, or we have this 4-part process that has 33 steps a piece to it. That bring those challenges to us so that whenever we're building the standard, that those things are addressed. That part of your problem set is made into that standard. That your neighbor's model exchange issues. That whatever wherever your data problems are or your data exchange necessary, let's make sure that is all captured as part of this standard. And then also validation and governance requirements. Like, okay, now that we're exchanging data, what types of validations are we going to put on it? What types of if we need to extend the standard because something new comes along that NERC says thou shalt have, what's our process there? So bring your ideas, bring changes, point out places where it's like, hey, you missed this. These are really, I feel like engagement of the industry is how this is going to move forward the best. And, you know, bringing up these types of things is really where I think that you can really help us help you move forward. So can you get next slide, Brian? And then what should you expect from us? Well, near term, we have a public facing webpage and a clear elevator pitch as to what we're doing and why it's important that you can tell your executive management. A defined message and stakeholder asking process, an initial scope for profile and testing targets, and appendix support for survey findings, etc. Follow up, again, use case intake, prioritization, alignment of the test models, the test data, governance, and then hopefully IO within the next 12 to 18 months. I think that was my 2 slides. Next is Alex.
Thanks, John. So for current milestones, again, we are looking to build towards that fall 2027 interop. We are currently here at the plenary update. We're falling into the 2 tracks that were mentioned on the stakeholder engagement track. That team will be sending out the governance structure, getting stakeholder commitments, confirming scope. And then on the technical track, we're going to be spinning up individual task forces and pulling volunteers from the different stakeholder organizations. We have a couple of smaller task forces already moving around things like overhead wire modeling that is needed for North American circuits and better transformer modeling, but also broader task forces of like, do we have all the NERC functional entities? Do we have the correct market models? Do we have the correct enterprise business models? And those groups will be meeting periodically. We're hoping to mirror the structure of the existing technical groups of weekly, bi-weekly meetings for those task forces as they see fit, and then also larger either quarterly or biannual face-to-face meetings at locations where either a vendor or a utility is, or PNNL. We're also looking to host a few of those meetings where we get together and just spend a week hammering out red line issues one by one to get those technical tickets closed out. And then we have the interop for building a test model that conforms to profiles and having the test witnesses and vendors confirm that this genuinely supports the use cases needed. Next slide. The immediate tasks that we have for the group are helping validate the mission, near-term direction that has been laid out, helping us identify the highest value exchange use cases. We have the initial set of use cases. Correct me, Ryan, but a summary of those is posted on the public-facing website, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. So please take a look at the use cases that are posted. Add your use cases. Help us identify what are the most high value, and it's not necessarily minimum effort. We're looking for the things that really solve the problems. And then overall, we are looking for your input from the utility, vendor, and consultant standpoints to make sure that these profiles and the interop provide you the highest value possible. I think back to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Alex, and everybody else. I appreciate it. We do have some questions coming in. I just want to take note on Alec McMoran's comment here. Yes, we do have intentions to do a multi-year IOP, and some of the people from NSOE have given us a little bit of detail, so we can help with that there, so make sure that we fall in line with what's going on. I'm not sure, maybe one of the experts on the call here can speak to, how would we get, real commitment and target dates, considering it's not something that's being told for utilities to implement, similar to Europe. Any input from Jeff, Pat, John, Alex? Like, can we offer, clear end dates or implementation dates? Sorry, I'm trying to read half on my phone without my glasses. Target dates for adoption.
I was just going to say, if you could hear me, I think my point is more, it's political within the organization. As a vendor, I know going to senior management and saying, we want to do this, they're going to say, why? And if it gets back to John's point, this is seen as being an academic exercise, then it's very difficult to get both buy-in for participation, but also more critically, the ability to actually start implementing it within the software stack. Whereas for NSOE, the difference was that there's a commitment from utilities to do it. So you had a reason for doing so. So it's maybe not necessarily saying, I'm not looking for PGM to turn around and say, we're definitely going to do this by January 1st, 2028, because I'm realizing I'm not in a position to do that. But if there is at least memorandums of understanding or some sort of white papers, things coming out from utilities saying, if this all goes to plan, there is a commitment to implement, then we can at least go to management and say, look, if we don't do this, we're behind the curve, we're better being inside supporting it, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure Sam's in the same position I'm in, and other vendors as well. It's just, there's limited resources, limited time, and it gets back to multiple IOPS. Pat knows as well as I do, we've been in multiple IOPS over the years. It has to be a bit of marketing, but the problem is if it's purely about being a demonstration, that starts to take away from some of the technical stuff, because if you turn up and you can only do half the stuff, and you think potential customers are there who are going to think you can only do half the stuff, are you better off not being there? Or if you're turning up and saying this is the first of two or first of three, and it's a learning thing, it's a collaboration, the next time you're better, it's more productive. So I think it goes back to John's point, it can't be seen as being academic. We have to be able to justify the investment in time.
That makes sense, Alan. Thank you for that input.
Completely agree.
Unrelated to that, I did do a paper, I did a presentation this at the CIM User Group, it's probably on the website. So like a lot of the things I've said is on that. And if you're in Montreal next week, I'll be talking about it as well. But so I did write some of this down in case you didn't, and it's in the presentation.
Alan, one thing that would be great is if you, Sam, too, and any of the other vendors, I know Pat did some feedback collection from GMDM, but if we could have a refresh of what are the key things you want improved over the way we did the GMDM interop, specifically towards the customer recruitment, multiple iterations, and then something that struck me, we may try to get some of the regulatory stakeholders in the room, because I know there is one state public utility commission that we are currently talking with. This is for phase 2 distribution interop, as opposed to the phase 1 transmission, but they are looking at a CIM mandate across that particular US state to comply with a House bill that was passed by their state legislature.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to involve, so Pat and I basically were involved with the UK definitions of the CIM profile for UK kind of distribution, which itself is more like transmission, because it's really just down the balanced kind of part of the network. And being read by the regulator. And I think that we have to be careful, because what if there's regulators already interested? Yes, get them involved. If you're trying to encourage regulators to do it, if not shown any interest, that should come at the end. That should be the end of the project phase of going, look what we've achieved and what's working, what other people are doing. And it just gets back to, make the beginning part of this be people who have a vested interest in making it work and who already understand the benefits, and we can kind of go with it. From that, I think is how I'd probably see this. The other thing I was going to mention was, how can I put this politely? We have to be aware of the politics of the US right now. And I understand why saying we can't just go with CGMES, because there will be a bit of that's a European thing. But the thing to remember is that CGMES came from CPSM, which was a North American profile. So from a political marketing perspective, I think saying that this was a North American standard that was taken on by Europe and enhanced and built on, and now we can learn from what's happened there to enhance it further, may help with any political considerations that come up along the way.
Interesting piece of information there, Alan. I'll definitely incorporate that into the messaging somehow. Thank you.
Yeah,
Michael,
I think it probably has to be subtle. It's just I'm now working for an American company. It becomes a bit more interesting. So.
It makes sense. Makes sense. Michael, you've had your hand up for a bit. What's your question, sir?
It's not so much of a question. Well, it's kind of a continuation of what Alan was talking about, and maybe a suggestion on how to address it. I mean, I'm in the similar situation like Alan's talking about, which I'm sure a number of the companies or consultants that are here is, we have to sell this to the executives in, my time on it, or, any folks from my team on it. So, perhaps if the team can put together collateral at the executive reading level, if you will, that, succinct to the point of the value it could provide. And even perhaps if there's some type of study or, collection, surveying, whatever report generated from actual utilities on it. And I don't know if that's what you were referring to earlier, but that can be shared, right? Or like Alan said, if there's a list of, understanding, agreements of what the intent is, and, these different utilities and vendors are saying, hey, yes, we're going to do this. Something that I can be able to take back to my executive leadership that they'll say, yes, this makes sense for us to be involved, both from a direction that the industry is going, and of course, like was mentioned, if the regulatory parties get involved in any way, shape, or form, I think that's a very, very big thing. But that would be my ask, is something that I can take back to executive leadership and our investors to say, hey, this is why we need to be involved here.
You got it, Michael. Thank you. Pat, did you have a question?
I just wanted to make the quick observation that, having lived on both sides of the Atlantic, it almost feels to me as if in North America there is it's not just hesitancy to support standards-based data exchange at any regulatory level. I mean, it's even complete hesitancy to specify anything. Just like, do it and do it interoperably, but I'm not going to give you any, it feels to me like, not going to give you any guidance as to what standard you might use, or, any deadlines on implementations, just kind of make it all work. I trust that you can do that. It feels to me like that's what it is. And I almost believe that there is a real doubt among regulators as to whether or not this stuff can even work, whether it can be real. And so I think potentially one of the benefits, if we are able to engage some regulators in the interoperability event, just to have them see that there are 6 different vendors that are all exchanging data. And I think the value of us actually using the existing EQ profile, which has been around for 6 years, 8 years now. That EQ profile has been a published standard, and it is widely implemented. And if we just had a crew of vendors that were able to use it to exchange transmission model information successfully, I think that's a kind of a first step that I don't think has been taken before. So I would look forward to that, perhaps moving the ball down the field a little bit, at least for a first IOP.
Thank you, Pat. Does anybody have any questions or comments on Pat's statements? All right, and then Jeff, I saw your hand just went down. Do you have another comment or question for the group?
Yeah, Ryan, I was just adding to a lot of Alan's comments as I was thinking through, where he was at. And I do agree, we need to process a lot of what Alan said because he's got a lot of experience in this space. So certainly, we'll take that in and use that. And, interesting when you mentioned politics, and I don't know if y'all have been following the World Cup games. It's been a real blast to have the World Cup here. Scotland drank all the beer in Boston, the Netherlands in their dance, and Norway with the rowing. It's been quite entertaining having a lot of the Europeans here and seeing that aspect of the country. Normally we don't have that many all at once coming over. But I will say the politics and the way that the regulatory industry is changing right now is a good time to strike, because we have so many things in play right now with the large loads, the data centers, FERC getting more involved. We've been looking at all the data center locations, what they can do from a backup generator response. We're getting more and more information at lower and lower levels. That is, Alan's very familiar. If we could take this at a distribution level and roll it up to BES and have a consistent way of doing a lot of that, we'd gain a lot of value with where the industry's heading and the way the grid's changing. So I think right now is a really good time to be working on it, but I do agree we have to build a really good use case so we can bring this forward and then get some type of commitment so we can move across all the different RTOs and ISOs. And I do understand exactly what you're talking about when you say resource allocations and expectations and figuring out how it works from a good executive summary. Certainly we'll work on that as well, because I think that will help everyone socialize the idea and make it more amenable when they bring it up with their companies as well. So I just wanted to add to that. Great input, and appreciate the commentary.
Yes, greatly appreciated. If anybody else has any other questions, please do so now in the comments so we can know. Otherwise, I'm going to give a couple closing comments. As everybody stated, this would be a really great effort for North America. We have a lot of great experts here to be a part of it. This meeting will be, or is recorded, so it will be posted on the UCA website, as well as if you can't get to it after the meeting ends, just let me know and I'll forward the recording to you. Plus, I'll make a transcript of everything and I'll upload it here to the webpage so it's easy to find. And if you need any sort of updates, I'll try to keep sort of like a blog section going so you know where we're at. I think that good next steps is we will meet collectively as the leadership team. Let's make some clear next steps on a nice document or in an email. We'll send that to you, send any pertinent links that you're going to need, and then give you a link for the survey again. We'll just keep that going the entire time, so in case someone finds it later on, we still get that data. And then if you want to change your answers or add more to it, you can. So we just have a good idea from the community going forward. I, of course, will keep working on promoting as soon as we have a little more detail. Right now, I have at least 5 written commitments from vendors and maybe 4 to 5 individual consultants that are interested. So this is good news. I'm glad that David Bogan brought that up so everybody knows we're on track there. If you have any questions, reach out to any of us at any time. The best way to contact us is just through the NACIM leads, LEADS, at ucaig.org. And I'll post that up here. I just realized it may not be unless you clicked on the button, so it's not overtly stated how to contact us. So I'll do that. If anybody has any other questions or comments, please do so right now. Oh, it looks like Samuel Phillipson's got something. Pat, Jeff, John, Alex, you want to add anything to Samuel's comment there, or is that good to just go?
I have a question or a clarification to Sam's question. By boundary, do you mean the frame and boundary metadata problem?
No, I'm talking about the concrete boundary data set that ENSOE has published and is now trying to move away from publishing, ironically. But that worked very well to facilitate model merging and splitting seamlessly without human intervention for all the individual grid models of Europe.
Yeah.
Okay, noted. I think what you're getting at is like WEC had the west side model compiled from all the individual TOP and BA models, and you're saying that we need the assembly boundary points across those.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's a it's a consideration. I think it's a major consideration for this whole effort, regardless of how it's implemented, or if we follow something similar to what they did at ENSOE or do something different. I think it's just a major consideration.
It's a really, really common use case. And that's really well put, Sam.
Yep. I think the one thing that, not to open the technical can of worms, but there's a lot of really good stuff we can leverage from the ENSOE implementation. But in my observation in the US, the boundary is often defined as a breaker rather than a bus. And so we can't exactly use that framework wholesale.
Well, they're kind of
I
fictional
think
nodes anyway.
I think it's more a case of we have to recognize the use case, but I don't think we could say right now what the technical solution to that is, because I mean, Sam is right. In Europe, we've taken one approach to it, but Alex has got those right, and it's different in North America. And we've also found that distribution, we ended up going down the route of overlapping was actually more useful than boundaries from the use cases that we were looking at. So I think it's more, we have to recognize that the use case is there, but we will decide what the technical solution to is as part of this project.
That's exactly right, Alan. And this is the exact, the overlapping is, to Alan's point, is what we're finding is more useful. That's technical and the weed stuff. And they're like, if you care about this, please join the task force. That would be my call to action. Like, if you have a personal opinion about the way this should be done, this is what the task forces are for.
Good point, Alex. And I think in the update email that I send, probably next week after we've had time to discuss internally, I'll add some links or at least some contacts on who to get in touch with so we can start some of those task forces that are needed. And I'll build something out on Box and everything, similar to what we've been doing for the 6150 IOP. We've got all the internal infrastructure ready to go. And we'll make sure everybody has links and they can see where they need to go and who they need to talk to. All right. With that, we got 5 minutes to spare. I don't see any more questions coming in.
Ryan, I do have
watch.
one more comment before we leave.
Go ahead, David.
I'm just going to give a blurb for the meeting in Montreal next week for IEEE. We have several CIM panels going on. We have one on Wednesday at 9 a.m. in the morning, and then we also have another one on Thursday at 8 a.m. And if anybody's interested, we'd be glad to have you drop in and see what's going on at the IEEE side of this industry.
Yes, it would be good to have you there. Thanks, David. All right, everybody. We really appreciate your time. Jeff, John, Pat, Alex, all the experts in the room. We really, really appreciate your time with this. And please watch for my next email and watch this page. You'll find it under any of our websites, under the new initiatives. This will probably get rid of the news soon, so don't be confused when that happens. But just give it a click and you'll be right where you need to be. All right, everybody. We hope you have a great day and thank you for attending.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.